you can definitely force yourself into an environment that literally doesn't have any type of connection to you, and they're just forced connections. Well, what's up, guys? It's JD and James back with another live stream. In today's live stream, you guys see the title. It's trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. So, what exactly do I mean by trying to fit a square peg into a round hole? Basically, what I'm talking about with that is something that forcing something that you want, and it's actually not something that even works. For instance, it could be, I think the easiest way I could actually think about this is, I'm going to start it off like this. I don't want the live stream to kind of go down this rabbit hole, but I think like looking for a specific type of woman in 2022. Like I see a lot of times people are like, oh, I want a woman who cooks, who cleans, who is, stay at home mom, yada, 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 whatever, whatever. And in 2022, these aren't necessarily realistic things. Or it could be like something for myself. I was just telling James this before we actually turned on the live stream. And for myself, I tend to kind of get a little upset. I wouldn't even say upset, but I guess I get like perturbed a little annoyed with social media sometimes. And it's like, why is everybody so plugged into social media? Why is everybody, so addicted to Instagram, or, idolatizing, or idolaters when it comes down to influencers or athletes, or, entertainers, or whatever it may be. And at the same time, as much as I have my own thoughts about these things, this is the actual reality of the world. So I can't try to force my opinions onto other people. All I can do is just kind of figure out a way to exist in this world as peaceful as possible. And one thing I'll say before I hand it over to James, this kind of ties into the live stream that we had last week. And I think the live stream that we had last week was named Rejection, How to Get the Last Laugh. And this actually kind of ties into it on the opposite end of the spectrum. I remember there was somebody in the comment section, or somebody in the chat in the live stream, who had said that, when do you know when to give up that pursuit? And when do you know when it's time to kind of just retreat? And, you keep bumping your head into the same wall over and over and over again. And I think this kind of ties into that. You're trying to force something that's not natural. Say, for instance, just like Jane made the analogy last week, you're 5'5" and 110 pounds, but you're, aspiring to go into the NBA and you're already 18 years old. It's like, you're not going to grow too much more at 5'5". You're not going to get to be 6'5". I think the average height in the NBA is like 6'7" or something like that. So it's like, the reality of you is that you should look into something else to get into, because if you keep on trying to get into the NBA at 5'5", you keep on getting rejected. I mean, you probably aren't even going to get a college scholarship. So at the end of the day, you're trying to fit that square peg into that round hole.
Yeah, man. And I think too, for this one, a lot of it really just kind of, it ties back in environments. And, I know we talk a lot about how important your environment is for you thriving. And if you connect this to plants, right, it's like if you try to grow a blueberry bush, in the desert or whatever, it's not going to work. And like the same thing is like if you try to grow a banana tree, in the winter, it's not going to grow to its full potential. And the truth is like you're kind of wired for certain things. There's certain things in your life that is like you're naturally going to have a little bit of an edge. And we do talk a lot about how your potential is far greater than you think in a lot of areas. So not to count out your talents, but I just think too, I guess I'll give an example of when I was kind of in the wrong environment and trying to stick a square peg into a round hole. Me working for a restaurant is trying to stick a square peg into a round hole. It's like, I don't deal well with the bullshit. I'm a terrible multitasker. I'm not good at schmoozing. Like if someone like tells me I'm wrong and I know I'm correct and like I can prove it, it's like I'm gonna hit back. It's like me trying to mold myself into that is like the most ridiculous thing you could come up with. Is like you end up, being frustrated and angry, and you end up being way worse off than if you just went to a different pursuit and you planted your seeds into some soil that was fertile for whatever you were built for. And it's like in that kind of environment, it's like things just seem to come, just fall in your lap. Just all these fruits just keep coming off the tree, and like all this abundance comes to you easily because you're swimming downstream at that point. You're not trying to swim upstream and try to be this person that you're not. It's kind of like the whole idea of like, alpha male, beta male, all this kind of stuff. It's like if you're not a
Gamma male.
personality, gamma males, but if you're not a natural person who's like an extrovert with a super loud voice that loves just constantly being around people, and you try to go present yourself as that, like in these different environments, like, oh, you got to go be dominant at work, and then it's like your natural personality just like you love everyone and you just want to be quiet, and you like don't want to like you're going to be miserable and you're going to do a terrible performance at it. So it's just going to be it's going to be a funny experience.
I'm just thinking about you trying to be some person who's like super passive, trying to be dominant at work and literally just going to work and getting fired that next day. Like trying to step out of character so much that they're trying to get fired, that they go and get fired the next day. It actually reminds me of this. Man, if you guys are out there, you guys should pull this up. It's a super funny. It's like a comedy thing. If you guys ever watch Key and Peele, like they copied Dave Chappelle's format of like their comedy show, and both of those dudes are mixed race, so they're half black and half white. And I remember there was a skit that one of them did, and there was like some girl that was going out on a date with him. She was like, "Oh yeah, dating a guy who's half black and half white, it's like you're getting the best of both worlds." And basically they went on a date, and the girl was like basically trying to get the dude to like fall into each stereotype, but every single stereotype that he fell into, like his black side versus his white side, was like the wrong side. He would be like super polite when he was supposed to be aggressive, be super aggressive when he was supposed to be polite, and then he ended up getting kicked out of the restaurant. So it was a funny ass skit. So if you guys ever get a chance to watch that skit, just type it in on YouTube, like a Key and Peele skit, dating a guy who's mixed race or something like that. But anyways, it was super funny. But going back to the environment thing, I think it's like super important to know what type of environment that we thrive in. And this kind of takes the conversation to a different, like down a different pathway. And I think exploration is extremely important when it comes down to finding out what things work for you in life in general. For instance, if I would have stayed in the same area that I grew up in my entire life, I would have literally been trying to stick a square peg into a round hole for years and years and years and years, and I would have never thrived. But because I stepped out of my comfort zone, and because I went out and explored, and it doesn't even need to be exploring super far. Like, for instance, I'm from the Bay Area. I'm from the East Bay, so near the Oakland area. And, all that East Bay area kind of all has like the same energy. But if you just go across the bridge to San Francisco, it's almost like you went into a new world. Like the demographics are super different. People are more affluent in San Francisco. There's more going on. There's more job opportunities. There's just more interesting things to do. There's more, nicer parks, different things of that nature. So even just by getting out of your comfort zone and going from Oakland to San Francisco, it can make a world of a difference in terms of the type of people that you interact with, in terms of the type of opportunities that you get. And, sometimes it's extremely important for us to, maybe spend a little bit more money and actually live in a better environment for us than to, always try to play the cheap route and be like, oh, I need to stay in the cheapest area as possible, because you never know what type of opportunities that you have. Trying to save money, penny pinching, kind of having that poverty mindset can actually set you back years, because, being around the right type of people can honestly be an amplifier to your success.
Man, that's a huge kind of point that you just made right there on penny pinching and like, trying to always go to the cheapest places and not realizing that actually certain things that you might think of as a waste of money are actually a great investment. I actually think about this a lot. I remember growing up, my mom and dad always taught me like, you never go to Starbucks. Like, it's so ridiculous. Coffee's too expensive. Like, that's a waste of money. You can make coffee at home. And, I go to the coffee shop every single day, and I overpay for coffee. And what's so funny though is like the greatest financial abundance in my life has come from coffee shops, from work that I'm getting done at coffee shops and the people I've met at coffee shops. I mean, like the connections I've made at coffee shops alone have paid for my coffee tenfold. And that, that's just a little example of something that you might not think of as an investment, but it actually is. And also, where you live, I'm not saying to not save money, but when you put yourself in a more affluent environment, you tend to, rub shoulders with wealthier people who also tend to have more connections, and it's kind of an upward spiral. So it's like if you can get into a nice, apartment building, even if you have the worst unit in the apartment building, but you're around those people, that would be way better than having the nicest unit in a terrible apartment complex and you're surrounded by, a lot of times when you live in those poor communities, it's like, you see a lot of trauma. It's like you hear, people yelling at their kids, screaming. I remember when I first moved here, someone got shot in the driveway of the entrance to the apartment. But it's like, man, I'm telling you that those little things of like putting yourself in those environments on where you're trying to head is so important.
Yeah, I mean, that's super important because I remember that was like something that both of my parents told me when I was younger. They're like, we'll rather live in the worst house in a nicer neighborhood than live in the best house in the worst neighborhood. And that's kind of a mentality shift that a lot of people have, especially when it comes down to like, superficial material things. It's like we always want to have the nicest of everything, but at the end of the day, it's like in order to have a certain quality of life, we have to put ourselves in a quality environment. And I was thinking about in terms of just like you were saying, your neighbors. Let's just say, for instance, I'm just going to use my home area, the Bay Area, as an example. It's like if you're living in a place like East Oakland, your neighbor might be, a drug dealer. Your neighbor might be a dope fiend. You don't ever know. Your neighbor might just be some person who's struggling and, can barely get by, opposed to, you might be somebody who just has a normal blue collar job. But if you save the money, if you have a better vision for yourself and you actually, spend the money to live in San Francisco, if you're living in like the Marina District or something like that, even if you have to have a roommate, your neighbor might be a lawyer. You might have a neighbor who works at Google, who might have some job opportunities for you. Next thing you know, you guys are doing favors for each other. Your neighbor's like, hey, look, I'm going out of town. Can you watch my cat? Come and feed him every day. Boom, you do that. Then next thing you know, your neighbor feels like he owes you one. He works at Google, hooks you up with a job. That might actually end up expediting your earning potential. And then you never know where you can go from there. And Art says, I like the perspective about the coffee shop a lot. In the words of JD, seeing past the trees. There are members clubs you can pay to enter that are a lot of money, but the connections make it worth it. Exactly. So I remember when I was down in Brazil, there was one of my friends who I used to train calisthenics with down there. This dude, Guilherme, super good in calisthenics. And he was a lawyer, super high performer, and just in life in general. Like he just had one of those personalities. I guess I don't know if they call it a type A personality, but just always trying to perform at the highest levels. And I remember he was just basically telling me I should come down to the yacht club with him because they had a yacht club in Salvador Bahia, where I was living in Brazil. And he was just saying, even if you're not really into like the yachts, he was like, it's more so just about meeting the people who are down there. Like people go to the yacht club, not necessarily because they're super interested in boats and super interested in getting on the water, but the social connections that you can make when you're down there is super important. And even when it comes down to politics or, he was actually a member on the board at the yacht club. So these type of things are good things to kind of get involved with. And one other thing I can kind of think about when talking about environments like this as well is a type of sports that we actually play when we're coming up. Where I'm from, it's like you either play baseball, basketball, football, you run track, right? We were never taught like, oh, you should play tennis. Oh, you should play golf. But at the end of the day, as much as we might look at these sports and say, oh, no, golf is not that's not a real that some people don't even consider golf a sport. But once you start kind of delving into different environments and you start mingling with different people, golf actually is an extremely important sport just on making connections alone. You can make business deals on golf course. You know what I mean? You can, make the type of connections that can change your life on a golf course. And, even for myself, I'm not going to lie, I've never played golf on a golf course myself, but at the end of the day, it's something that I'd be open to just because of the fact that not only looking at it as like a pastime, but looking at it as something as, hey, this might be an opportunity to meet some people. And, you know, I would say for me, putting a square peg into a round hole would be like, oh, I only want to play basketball. It's like, okay, from my experience coming up, especially in Richmond, California, like basketball courts, there's always fights. People, I remember the gym I used to play at in Richmond, it's like, every day there was a fight at the basketball court. Every week somebody was threatening to go to their car to go get their gun. It's like, do you want to be in this environment just because you like playing basketball, or would you rather be in an environment playing golf where somebody can potentially help you get a 6-figure job, or even better than that, making some type of connection that can really get you a powerful position?
And yeah, this is like, I mean, this is the thing that can literally amplify your income, like, 3, 4, 5-fold. I mean, it's kind of funny. It reminds me of the calisthenics park over in Hawaii, like the amount of connections you can build up over there. I mean, it was pretty crazy. There was one guy almost got me a real nice commercial real estate gig. There was we met a dude from Facebook. He watched one of our lives. But I mean, doctors were there all the time. I mean, there are some insane connections. And so a lot of times there's like low key places that actually have especially the tighter the community. Cause I've noticed, at least with commercial gyms versus the hole in the wall, like if you go to like a CrossFit gym, which is a more like tight knit community, and I'm not saying if you want to start up CrossFit or whatnot, but they tend to be a lot more close-knit communities where you're actually more likely to make connections with people there. Whereas like a, commercial gym, it's like people tend to be more in their own bubble and aren't really networking or kind of building up that community. So I think a lot of times the best networking opportunities are going to actually be a little bit smaller communities that are a little bit more specific.
And speaking on networking, guys, this is probably going to be, we're going to do more live streams throughout the weeks and, going forward, but probably not as often because me and James are working on that growth mastermind project. So if you guys are watching this right now and you guys haven't emailed me about joining the growth mastermind, what the growth mastermind is going to be, maybe 2-3 times a month we'll meet, via video conference. And we're just going to be discussing different growth topics. We're going to dive into some different topics that we usually don't dive into on the live stream. Whoever's in the group is going to be able to offer, a topic that they might want to talk about. And we might touch on that. Also, we're going to be doing assigned readings, books that are basically just going to help us grow as human beings and grow financially, grow, spiritually or whatever. We're going to have a different group readings, mandatory workouts. Like one thing that I think is extremely important is getting a certain amount of steps in per day and like holding each other accountable. And, there's going to be a lot of accountability in this growth mastermind. Also, we're going to have a group chat on WhatsApp. So if you guys are interested, it's going to be $25 a month, which in my opinion is extremely cheap for, the type of value that comes along with the networking opportunities and just the growth in general with having a community like this. So if you guys are interested, hit up my email address. That's going to be travelsaints@yahoo.com. The link will be in the description box below. But that's an example of joining a community in terms of actually I want to pivot into another topic that me and you talked about one day, James. And we were just talking in general, just in terms of like how much we value something, right? So when it comes down to, there's like YouTube is like the Library of Alexandria. If you guys know the reference, back in Egypt in the ancient days, the Library of Alexandria was supposed to have more information than any place in the world. But YouTube is kind of like that, because if you want to learn how to do anything, if you look hard enough, YouTube can probably teach it to you. And, you guys have probably heard people call YouTube like YouTube University. So there's a lot of opportunities to learn things on YouTube. But I think one of the problems with YouTube is that the information is free. So when people get things that are free, they tend not to, they tend not to appreciate it as much. It's almost like, yeah, it's free. It's there anytime I want it. So I'll get back to it. I know I can learn this language, and I know I need to learn this language because I'm actually going to go to this other country for a while. But because it's on YouTube, I'll go deal with it later. Or because, I'm watching somebody do calisthenics and teach a tutorial, I can just watch it and I don't need to apply any of this information. But when you actually pay for something, you have more incentive to actually put whatever information that you get into practice. And, that's one thing I've noticed about YouTube in general is like people can go into certain spaces and they end up kind of in a never ending circle of, just consuming information, but then they never actually apply any of this knowledge practically into their life. And, me and James were actually joking about this earlier. We were joking about it in terms of like red pill content, or in terms of like dating coaches specifically. It's like a lot of young guys who don't actually get outside of their house and get into the real world can, they can hop on YouTube, learn something from a dating coach. And it might actually, who knows, it might actually be practical advice. I don't watch dating coaches, but they might actually have some practical advice. They watch it, they feel like they learned something, but then they actually don't leave the house. And then they start getting the frustration because women are on their mind. So then they start watching some negative red pill content about why that women are to blame for, society going downhill and yada, yada, yada. Then they're fueled up with anger. Then they watch some more content that, affirms that reaffirms their anger. And, it just gets into a vicious cycle to the point where, the whole day went by and all they've done is just watch content and actually haven't done anything with their life. They haven't went outside and met anybody. They haven't done anything productive. It's just a never ending process of information overload.
Man, I definitely want to touch too on that. What
What's
you were
going
talking about, paying for something. And this is actually funny that, right when you just said that, it sparked my mind. I got a free year of the Enterprise Udemy, and it's like they've got all the courses you could possibly want. And it's like, it's so funny when you look at the site, and it's like when all the courses cost money, it looks like, oh, I want to take this course, I want to take that course, I want to learn this, I want to learn that. And then when it's free and you literally, it's just a buffet, you can have whatever you want. I actually ended up using YouTube way more than I ended up using the Udemy. I thought the YouTube courses a lot of times were better than the Udemy ones. But if you had actually paid, $25 or $50 for a Udemy course, you're actually going to probably focus more and your brain's going to tune in. I've noticed that actually with books. For some reason, I feel like you could find virtually any book you want on Google, and you could get a free copy, a PDF. But at the same time, it's not the same as like you physically order a copy on Amazon. The book comes in. It's like you're at least going to give that book a certain amount of your time before you completely write it off. But it's like when you're just looking up that free PDF, it's like you take like one look at you look at 3 pages. Like, yeah, this is a waste. Close the browser. And, it's funny that psychology works that way, that we can't really find value when it comes to us too easily. I don't know if have you ever had the experience where there's a YouTube video you go back to and you watch it a lot?
Definitely.
And then it gets deleted and you're like, fuck, where's that video? I love that video. You know what I mean? I didn't realize, I should have downloaded that video. That thing, you just take it for granted because it was it's always there. It was free. It just came to me like it was nothing. And then you go back one day and it's not there, and you realize oh shit, that was actually an extremely valuable piece of content that I don't have anymore.
No, definitely. I think that's I think one of the things that I really resonated with what you were just saying is the fact that when you actually purchase a book, you're way more incentivized to actually read that book. And for me, I notice that all the time. It's like, I don't necessarily have anything against audiobooks because it's actually very easy to consume audiobooks. You can listen to it while you're in your car, maybe while you're on a plane ride or something like that. But something about actually having that physical copy almost forces me to read it. It's like, okay, I went out and, invested in this. So I want to see this investment through. I want to make sure that this investment was actually worth it. So I'm actually going to make sure that I use this, opposed to, it's almost like the difference between free food that you get at work and then something that you actually pay for. You're like, today I went out and bought, a lobster, like a lobster sandwich, which is like a Vietnamese sandwich, a banh mi sandwich with lobster in it. It's like, because I had to pay, it's like, it wasn't some $5 sandwich. It was like a $30 sandwich. So because I had to pay $30 for it, it's like, usually a lot of times I might actually buy a sandwich and it's literally like gone in 30 seconds. But I actually literally made sure that I took the time to like savor every single bite. I'm like, okay, I'm chewing all this shit. You know what I mean? I paid $30 for a sandwich. I'm about to make sure I get every little ounce of flavor out of this shit. But we got Adam Lucas says, hey man, what's going on, Adam? How you doing? And Tim Effect, what's going on, Tim? Appreciate you stopping through. If you guys are not subscribed to Tim Effect's channel, make sure you guys go subscribe to his channel. If you guys want some motivation and to know that age is literally just a number, go to check out his channel. Because, I see people saying fit over 40, fit over 50, but this dude's in his mid 60s out there getting it, hitting dips, push-ups, pushing the weights. No excuses. I remember for a while, Tim was working out with a boot on. He had like a boot because he had like a Achilles problem. He was still out there getting more activity than anybody else. And the dude's ripped up and yoked up at 60 something years old. I actually had this conversation with my mom earlier just about ages that we start things. And people tend to think that because they're at a certain age, like say for instance, and I think this is actually pretty prevalent because of like physical fitness tends to be linked to athletics in a lot of aspects, or people kind of look at it that way. So for instance, James, it's like somebody might think to themselves like, okay, I'm 40 years old, right? Why would I get into sprinting? Why would I go to a track and start sprinting? Why would I like try to get as fast as possible at 40 years old? I've never done this before. There's no chance of me going to the Olympics at 40 years old, right? So a lot of people might have the mindset to where if they can't become a professional, if they can't become world class at something, which you never know, people can become world class at like lifting. There is certain things that you can become world class at later on in your life. You just never know. You just have to get started. But the thing is, you can always become the best version of yourself. And no matter what, we can still hit PRs in our 60s. We can hit PRs in our 70s. Basically, the later that you start something, the quicker that you're going to get to those PRs in general. And Adam Lucas says, yo, JD, first off, how are you feeling? I'm good, man. I'm actually feeling really good. So to give you guys an update on like my rehab and kind of my physical activity, I've been trying to take it extremely slow. But this actually is I'm actually kind of thankful for this in a lot of ways, just because it kind of makes me scale back or kind of zoom out a little bit and maybe get the perspective of somebody who might be a beginner. And although I'm not a beginner when it comes down to calisthenics or physical fitness in general, I've been forced to kind of go back to that beginner stages to where I have to take baby steps to progress in what I'm doing. So for me, the first thing that I'm doing, and this is actually something I would recommend if you're somebody who's not physically fit, if you're somebody who's just looking to start getting some movement in general, the first thing you got to do is start walking. Incrementally increase those steps every day. I remember the first day where I kind of did a little bit of walking, I did like 5,000 steps. And, as little as that sounds, that was like a big deal for me coming out of surgery. Then I went to like 8,000 steps. Then I went to this week, I had like 3 days in a row where I did 10,000 steps. And then today I'm at like, I didn't get as much in as I wanted to, but I still got to 11,000 steps today. So, for me, the new barrier for me, or the minimum amount of steps I'm going to do every single day is going to be 10,000 steps. But, I'm going to start pushing it to like 15 to 20. And then once you start getting in the 15 to 20,000 steps range per day, that's actually some decent exercise. Like, that's a good amount of cardio. And then like James said, by the time I'm at week 6, where, that's supposed to be the week I can get back to training, I might be at 30,000 steps per day. And 30,000 steps per day is actually no joke. And another question here, second, I wanted to ask, when you're at your worst moments, you being broke or not having the body that you want, what helps you keep pushing? That's actually a really good question. And I think, I think broke the part about being broke is actually I think being broke and not having the body that you want can be they can be kind of similar in a lot of ways, but I think being broke in a lot of ways is like you can have your back up against the wall. And when it comes down to adversity in our life, especially like I can't pay my rent, there's two ways that you can go about this. You can either have that pit bull mentality when you're cornered, or you can just kind of crack and kind of give into the circumstances and get evicted. But that pit bull mentality is like you're gonna scrap. It doesn't matter if you got to sell things in your house. It doesn't matter if you got to just find creative ways to make money. If you got to do side gigs, you got to put in some overtime at work, whatever it may be, you're going to figure out some way to get your head back above water. And I think adversity in general in life is like a character test. Now, when it comes down to not having the body that you want, I think you can have a bunch of different motivations. For instance, for me, my motivation with physical fitness is like I tend to have more of a performance motivation. So for me, it's like, okay, I want to be able to hit a certain amount of muscle ups in a row, or I want to be able to hit a certain amount of handstand push-ups, or I want to try to hit this new movement. And for me, having a certain physique comes along with being able to do a lot of these things. So for me, when you're slacking off, maybe when you're, not looking your best or you're not feeling your best. So for me, my motivation has always been performance. But even you might have a motivation of like, hey, look, I'm not happy with my body right now. So, every time you look in the mirror, it's a reminder that you need to be more disciplined. And same thing it go with the finances as well. It's like we need to be disciplined in order to make the type of moves that we want in our life, or to make the type of changes that we want in our life. Be it that we need to put in some more work, or we just need to stop spending as much money. When it comes down to food or the type of body that you want, we might need to put into. I think it's actually a good example, because it's like with finances, you either need to put in more work or you need to stop spending so much money. With your body, you either need to put in more work with exercise, or you need to stop eating so much. So, you can actually kind of link the two. But I don't think that there is necessarily exact motivation behind it. For everybody's going to have a different motivation, but any motivation can be a good motivation as long as it's sustainable.
And on that topic too, I think the idea that, hell is a bottomless pit and there's also no limit to how far you can take something is a good realization to have. Like, I feel like everyone has like a all or nothing mentality. Like, oh, I'm either going to make $1 million a year or I'm going to be dead broke, or I'm either going to have, a shredded 8-pack and, have this amazing physique, or I'm just going to let it all go and, just let myself go eat Doritos every day. And I think the problem with that mentality is it allows you to, when you're struggling, to just give up completely, when that's kind of another huge reason why we're so passionate about this 7 days a week mindset. The whole idea behind 7 days a week is that you're planting seeds every day. You're putting some type of effort towards your goals every day, whether it's, you're putting effort towards your finances every day. You're putting effort towards your fitness, and you're saying, you know what, like if you're making 25,000, you want to be aiming at making 30,000. If you're making 35, your goal is 35. And it's like, that's not something that you can just write off as, oh, well, I don't make, $250,000 a year. I guess might as well just hang it up and, do a half-ass job at work. Like it doesn't work like that. It's like, if you have a 4-pack, it would be better if you had a 6-pack. If you have a 6-pack, it would be better if you had an 8-pack. Like the mentality you need to have is that, like the, small incremental micro victories have extreme value. So it's like, if your back's against the wall, it's like, you need to start looking at like, if you're cornered, you're living paycheck to paycheck, like, can I save $50 a month? It's like those. And the truth is when you actually lower that goal a little bit, but you attack it with full effort, a lot of times you're going to far surpass that goal. And that's going to give you that momentum to propel you even further and keep making that upward spiral happen. And the absolute, like, never throw in the towel on life. Like never buckle, like never give up completely at anything. It's like keep on putting some effort towards it. Even if it's showing up, like showing face, that's way better than like, even if you're doing something, it's like, this isn't show up and show, like, even if you right now you're watching this, you're like, I know I'm going to fail at my fitness journey. I've tried losing weight. Just to appease, just show up and even go to the gym and literally just walk around the gym if you have to, but keep showing up. Like, don't ever throw in that towel completely. I think that, like, if you have that mentality, it's like you never know when you're going to get that little burst or that wave's going to come that you're going to catch, and you're going to catch that like upward momentum. And like, because I mean, I feel like that's the truth too about all these pursuits. Like, you're going to have plateaus no matter what pursuit you're and so sometimes you're just trying to hang on to the progress you already have. Like, you're literally just hanging on. But then when you catch that that wave that comes, that's when you make those huge leaps and bounds.
Yeah. No, I think, like, especially when it comes down to, like, how do you keep going? How do you keep pushing? It has to be the micro victories, because you're not going to get the results that you actually want overnight. So, if you say, for instance, you're overweight tomorrow, after you've put in, an hour and a half of working out today, you're still going to wake up tomorrow and you're still going to be overweight, more than likely. You're still going to maybe not be at your goal. So paying attention to the smaller things, or just be content with the fact that you're putting in effort. And, actually, I think one of the more difficult aspects of, when you're broke, or when you're, not seeing the type of results that you want, or maybe you don't have the desired physique that you want, faith is extremely important. And if you don't believe in what you're doing, if you don't believe in yourself, then it's almost going to be impossible, to be completely honest with you. Like, I know there's certain times in life where people might believe in us a little bit more than we actually believe in ourselves, but we have to find some way, somehow, to, like, even if it's just kind of figuring out a way to put it in your imagination, that you can kind of you can see yourself at that finish line, or, where you want to be in terms of your physique, or you can see yourself, living in that neighborhood that you want to live in, or you can see yourself getting that position at, whatever company that you want to work for. You have to kind of envision these things and kind of meditate on them. And meditation can be an extremely powerful practice when it comes to that as well. And also, patience is going to be something that you're going to need as well, because if you're too impatient, you're going to pretty much give up on everything in life. And just like James says, you don't want to give up on any of these pursuits, any of these things that you really see that's extremely important to you. You have to have patience when it comes down to it. Rome wasn't built over a night. Nobody gets rich overnight besides lottery winners, and they go broke in like 3 or 4 years and end up having a drug habit. So, these are the type of things. You're not going to get in insane shape overnight either. And Art says, so true about finances and physique. After 2 years of messing around, I've been consistently fasting and eating don't know exactly what the next part of that is, but the consistency is key too. So it might take 2 years. It might take more than 2 years for you to get get to where you want to go, especially in terms of, I feel like, in terms of a financial pursuit, like compounding money and, saving money. And, like, say, for instance, you're thinking about buying a house, right? In order to save for a down payment of a house, is going to take, unless you just got some super high powered job, if you're just a regular guy working a regular job, getting a house is something that's an extremely time consuming thing to do, because you're going to have to, have that mindset of, like, delayed gratification. And it might take you 5 years to save up just for a down payment. And it might take you 5 years to fix your credit in order to, or I'm probably not going to take you 5 years, but it might take you a few years to fix your credit in order to actually get a loan. These type of things can take a long time. So you kind of have to have faith in the process and just kind of be content with staying consistent every single day. Okay. And Art says comment cut off, but he meant eating his daily calories. Yeah. So it's important. You got to make sure that you kind of stay on point with these things. And when it comes down to fitness pursuits, holding yourself accountable is something that's also going to be important. And I think we need to hold ourselves accountable in all areas of life. But, one way that you guys can get on your game in terms of your fitness is you guys can train with me one-on-one. Go to my website. Link will be in the description box below, or you can just email me if you guys are interested. So, the thing about me and James' training style is that, it's funny because me and James know this training style works. Like 7 days per week, calisthenics, staying consistent, keeping your eyes on, the process instead of looking at the prize all the time. Like these things definitely work. Like all this stuff compounds. And like my goal when it comes down to training people is always to make sure that the people are going to be self-sufficient after that. It's not about feeding you fish every day. It's about teaching you how to fish so you can feed yourself after that. But if you guys have any questions in the chat, we kind of got a quiet chat today. I see people in the watching the live, but today we are a little bit quieter. So if you guys got any questions, send those through. But James, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, back when I was training clients, that was one of the things that actually like frustrated me a little bit, because when I was training them, every single exercise I had them doing, I was telling them exactly why I was having them do it. I was telling them exactly why I had them doing as much volume. Like I was explaining the whole process and exactly how they should expect to feel the next day. And I almost got the vibe that it was like they almost wanted it to be like this permanent thing. Like they want me to keep training them. Like, I don't care why, just, you tell me what to do and then I'm going to do it. And it's like, that's to me, not what this is about. It's like, and I think that's why you guys are actually here in watching the live stream. It's like, you want the knowledge aspect of it too, to go with the fitness pursuit. It's like, there is a certain level of practicality to getting a program and following the program to a T. It is time efficient. It's like, that is, if you just want to reach the goals you want as fast as you can and put as little effort into it as get a, pre-made program that works and that's effective, that's going to give you results. But if you actually want to understand this process, so, and it's kind of like, JD's going through a setback right now, and he's not even stressing as much as people who have colds. We've had people in the chat, they're like, oh, I got a cold, did I lose all my strength? And it's like, JD's literally, going through a cancer surgery, and he's not even stressed. He knows he's going to get back to his, peak shape, and he's going to be hitting PRs. And the reason he understands that is because he's built himself back up so many times, because he understands the process. So it's like, if, that's why it's so important to understand fitness and not just, mindlessly follow through steps. Like, oh, what diet works? Oh, when I was following this diet, I was in the best shape. Oh, but then when I switched to this, it stopped working. It's like, well, like, do you understand the why behind the diet? Like, have you experimented with different things and like seen like, oh, when I eat this, I tend to have a little bit more strength. When I eat this, it tends to, lower my appetite a bit. So it's a benefit there. Oh, this here tends to help me get better sleep. I mean, how you feel throughout the day is in large part to do with your sleep and then your diet. But it's like, if you actually pay attention to these things, when it's a cause and effect, you eat a meal, like, watch how you feel, you start building up an intuition. And then you don't need somebody to tell you like exactly what to eat each meal. You understand, why you're eating what you're eating. So I think that's kind of a big part too on maybe what separates our philosophy in fitness versus maybe other content creators. Whereas like they want to be, oh, I'll give you some fish, or I'll give you a pre-made diet program. Whereas like, we're not even going to talk about specifics. We're going to tell you exactly why you eat a certain way. What's the mindset behind, like, how did we even come up with that program? Like, how did that idea even get built in the first place?
Yeah. Now, what's funny is that I've actually trained, there's different people who kind of have a different mentality when it comes down to working one-on-one with somebody, especially I think more so than the training, because than the actual diet. It's like some people want me to tell them to a T, oh, how many calories can I eat? I want to know exactly what I should eat. What vegetable should I eat for lunch? What protein source should I eat for dinner? How many bites should I have of it? And it's like they don't want to think. I think a lot of people kind of have the mindset like, I don't want to think. I want you to get these results for me, opposed to I want you to teach me how to be self-sufficient and manage this stuff for myself. Teach me how to work out. Teach me why in a day I need to do this exercise along with this exercise. Teach me why I need to do this exercise to build up the strength to do this movement. And one thing that kind of made me think when you're talking about different diets kind of have different effects on certain things is I think one thing that me and you do, James, that we kind of don't even we subconsciously do it. And we consciously do it as well, but we don't necessarily think about it that much because it's so second nature to us. It's like when we're in a mindset of hitting PRs, we tend to eat a certain diet, and we tend to we might say, hey, we're gonna go bulking and we want to get strong in this movement. And for me, I noticed there was like a switch. There was like a switch that was flipped for me when I kind of went into start getting into my running pursuit. It was like I went into from eating a lot of protein and vegetables to I started being conscious about, hey, I need to make sure that I eat a lot of carbs the night before I go running. And because I noticed a couple of nights that I went heavy on carbs, my body was just craving it because I was running so much. And then those nights that I went heavy on carbs, I was hitting PRs on, my distances, and I was hitting PRs on how many, what my times were per mile. So, these are things that I'm conscious of. And like I always say, we are our own science experiment. So we need to be taking notes on, okay, so today I felt really good. Why did I feel so good today? What did I eat today? What did I eat yesterday? What have I been eating leading up to the day? What type of habits have I been doing that's making me feel so good? And, these are things that we need to be very cognizant of in order for us to grow. And Tim Avec says, you guys always preach real truths. Whatever you speak on, appreciate you guys. Appreciate you too, Tim. And the Chrisaby, maybe I'm reading that wrong. Hey, man, how does a guy increase his value in a relationship? So I would say in terms of, I think the way I'm reading this is that you might be in a relationship already and you want to increase your value. So my take on this is that you actually need to come into a relationship with a certain amount of value, because the way you start things off tends to be the way that people view you. And especially when it comes down to setting boundaries. And I don't really know what you mean by increasing value, but, I think people kind of come into a relationship viewing you in a certain way. And, like say, for instance, let's say you start off a relationship with a girl, and because you think this girl is, so incredible, you're just like, okay, well, this is normally my rule, but I'll break it this time because I'm dealing with her, or, I'm just letting her walk all over me, or, on the first 5 dates, I paid for everything. And now all of a sudden I want her to pay for something, or now all of a sudden I want her to respect me. More than likely, that's not going to happen, especially when it comes down to relationships. Actually, it really happens like that when it comes down to, just friendships as well. I remember I had this one friend, and every time we used to go someplace, he didn't have a car. So I always had to come pick him up. And every time I got to his house, it's almost like he just started getting ready right when I came and picked him up. And, the first few times that I went over to his house, I just waited for him. I literally waited in the car for like 20 minutes for this dude to get ready so we can go someplace. And then the next time I came over, I'm like, dude, what are you taking so long to get ready for it? And it just got to a point where it's like a habitual thing, to the point where it was 2 options that I could have when I went over my friend Vontre's house. It was either A, I tell him I'm outside his house when I'm actually leaving my house, or B, when I get to his house and he takes more than 5 minutes to get outside, I just leave his ass. So these are the two things that I could do to the point where people can start taking you serious. But when it comes to increasing your value, I mean, there's multiple ways that you can. Value is kind of one of these subjective terms. You can have value physically, you can have value spiritually, you can have value in terms of the type of wisdom that you provide. You can have value when it comes down to your finances. But when it comes down to relationships, I think one of the most important aspects of value that I've noticed, and that I would say even not only just romantic relationships, but our friendships as well, is that when you have wisdom to share with somebody, they tend to respect you more than any other aspect of value. You can be, physical fitness can change drastically within a matter of a month, but wisdom can't, doesn't necessarily, like understanding something on a spiritual level or on like certain deeper mental levels doesn't happen in 1 month. It takes a transformation to go through that. And I think that that's something that comes along with time. But if you're with somebody who's open-minded and is willing to kind of grow with you, that's pretty much the only way that you can do it. I don't necessarily think that if you're already in a relationship and somebody views you as low value, you can't change their mind into thinking that, you're high value. And at the end of the day, I don't really believe in like trying to convince somebody of anything anyways. So I don't really know exactly where you're going with this question, but I personally, if I'm with somebody who doesn't necessarily respect me in the way that I want them to respect me, it's probably best to just start over.
Yeah, I'm thinking that might be the move. If I'm reading his comment right, like you said, you really can't. I'd say though, actually, say you spent, I don't know, 50% of the time, with that person doing things you guys enjoy together, 50% of the time investing it in yourself. If you start seeing them, maybe valuing you less, a lot of people's tendency would be to put more energy and time into them. But really, now it's time that you start investing more time and energy back into yourself, and maybe start strengthening just your friendships, and strengthening, focusing on your goals, your pursuits, and putting a little bit more time and energy into that, and then realizing this thing might not end up working out, and then, or maybe she might have a change of heart when she sees that you're serious. She might go see what else is out there and realize that it doesn't stack up, and then all of a sudden now you're seen as being a little bit higher value.
And then at that point, you probably aren't even going to want it back anyways.
Yeah,
To be
that's
honest with you, because for the most part that I've noticed in my life, and I don't necessarily think this is just relegated to men. I think it just has to do with people who kind of have a growth mentality and a growth mindset, and who are always trying to do better in life. Is that sometimes you can get into relationships with people who are kind of satisfied with where they're at in life, and when you're in a relationship with somebody like this, it's kind of like this is actually trying to force a square peg into a round hole. This is actually a perfect example of trying to force a square peg into a round hole, because if you're with somebody who doesn't have that growth mentality, then they're not going to be open to you growing, and they're not going to actually give you any room to grow either. It's like they're going to be the type of person who's like, oh, you switched up, you changed. And it's like, yeah, we should be changing. We should be growing. We should be getting better. So by the time you get out of that relationship, 6 months down the line, you're going to have grown so much. You're going to look back and be like, man, what was I even doing with this person? What was I even doing hanging out with this friend group? What was I even doing with this woman? These people were almost like poison to my progress. And, I was trying to, instead of worrying about myself and focus on bettering myself, I was worried about trying to please these people. So I think that starting over is always a good thing. And, James had brought this up in another live stream. The art of letting go is extremely valuable, because a lot of times we can hold on to things that are not actually good for us just because we're comfortable with them. So, letting go is actually an art. It actually is funny because I was watching this, I don't even know why these videos pop up into my feed sometimes, but sometimes I'll watch them anyways, just because I feel like a lot of times I'm just kind of curious and I want to like see what these people have to say. There was a dude who was talking about celibacy on YouTube, and he was saying like why he's celibate and why he wants to be celibate. And his whole rationale behind it is that nothing in the flesh is permanent, which I believe, which I also agree with. I don't think anything in the flesh is permanent. Material things, relationships, at some point, these things are going to come to an end. Either somebody's going to, expire. Somebody's going to break up with them. So, even if the relationship lasts a lifetime, somebody's going to pass away first. Somebody's going to break up with the other person. Divorces happen. So we need to realize that nothing in the flesh lasts forever. But at the same time, having the ability to let go and to let go peacefully is an extremely important skill to have, because if you need to let go or somebody breaks up with you, then it's going to be better to have the understanding like, hey, look, I tried my best, but it didn't work out. Now it's time to move on. That's letting go in a rational manner, in a healthy way. But, a lot of times people can go crazy when somebody leaves them, breaks up with them, stops being friends with them. Even on the extreme end of the spectrum, when somebody passes away, you know, this is actually a part of life. So we need to understand that letting go is works in that way too. As hard as it may be, we have to understand that this is just life, and you can look at it as a good thing, bad thing, but in our reality, it just is. So I would say that's definitely something that we need to take into consideration. And Art says, what ways do both of you prefer to learn new things? Are you a visual learner, audio learner, etc., a mixture? So I actually, what's funny is that when I was in middle school, I was flunking out of school, and it was because of the way that the school teaches. I'm not an auditory learner at all. For whatever reason, I can tend to be able to learn on like audio books. I can kind of listen, but I do tend to space out a lot. But I actually got tested, and when I was in the 6th grade, I got tested into the 98th percentile of like basically performance as a kid. But I was getting all D's and F's, so they were trying to figure out what it actually was. So then they actually tested my learning style, and my learning style was visual and tactile. Tactile mean that I have to do things. I have to be active. I have to actually be engaging. You know what I mean? I need to touch something. I need to be moving. I need to do certain things of that nature. And then the visual part, I need to see somebody doing things opposed to them just standing there doing this the whole time. And if you guys notice in the school system, how do they teach? All the kids just sit in one section looking at the teacher just standing there doing this, writing shit on the chalkboard. And for me, that's a terrible way to learn. So I know that doesn't work for me, but there's some people who learn like that extremely well. And for them, that's the way that they learn. I think James, I'm gonna let James elaborate on his learning style, but this is a part of that whole science experiment thing. Art, you're not gonna be learning the same way that me and James do. I don't learn the same way that James does. James doesn't learn the same way that I learn. We're all our own science experiments, so we need to try different things. Okay, let me listen to an audio book. Let me pick up a physical book. Let me, join a book club. Maybe talking to other people about the material is going to actually help me out in terms of understanding exactly what I read. So we got to figure out how we learn. We got to figure out how our body works. We got to figure out what diet is best for us. We got to figure out what tactics we need to do to get good sleep. What type of, some people sleep on their back, some people sleep on their side. So, James, I'll let you elaborate on that as well.
And I just want to say, Art, I absolutely love that question. That is like that we actually need to do a whole live stream on this topic. This is a brilliant question. I think my strategy has been all styles. Like basically, I think however much brain power I have is tied to what style I want to use at that point. So, I guess I'll use programming for an example because I have to learn a lot of new things. If I'm at my max brain capacity, I want to be doing. So that tactile learning style, I want to be building something. I want to be using the new technology I'm learning. I want to actually be doing something because that takes the most amount of brain power. After that, I might be visual or audio. That would be kind of actively maybe watching or reading something while taking notes. So it's active, but you're learning the information. Now, if I'm at like, maybe, I'm tired or it's like I know I'm not at my peak mental state, I might want to throw on a video, and it's like that's kind of good for me to get an overview of something. So, for example, passively watching or listening to something, I think is good for giving like not deep dives, though. That's good for like an overview of something. So if you want to get like an overview of a subject, it might be cool to like throw on a documentary for an hour and a half and like, maybe you're eating something while you're doing that, but it's like a 50%. But if you're at like 100% brain power, I think tactile is like 1,000% the way you learn the best. You have to be like that. To me, turns on, it activates all your senses. It's like, if you're trying to get better at fitness, you need to be actually doing fitness. But it's like, after your workout, you might be watching our live stream here. But this isn't necessarily getting you stronger, but what it is doing is giving you information that's going to help you in the future with your fitness goals. So I think this is that's an amazing topic. We actually need to dive in on this a bit deeper.
Yeah, and it's actually reinforcing what you already know. So you might already know about me and James's ideas about the 7 days for week mindset. You might already know, greasing the groove, basically intermittent workouts throughout the day, intermittent fasting, different, tactics that me and James might use in our fitness. But you might need some affirmation. I think a lot of times, you think about it in relationships, it's like relationships at work, people give words of affirmation. It's like if you went through your whole relationship with your girlfriend and she never told you that she loves you, it's like you might start looking at it like, man, do I really even want to be in this relationship? Does this person even value me? So you need to kind of be reinforced in a lot of ways, maybe through watching me and James's live stream, or maybe you want to watch some other calisthenics athletes who, or maybe you want to watch me and James actually perform calisthenics. You might want to go to some of our instructional videos. And then you're like, okay, let me take some notes. Okay, maybe tomorrow I'm going to do this exercise. And that's a part of the learning process as well. It's like a 24-hour thing. It's not necessarily something that, something that we can say, okay, this is my hour to learn today. And that's it. Like we're going to be learning something, even when we're not actively thinking about it, we're still thinking about it subconsciously. And actually, that's actually one thing I actually wanted to touch on before we move on to the next question. But I was watching this video and it was talking about learning, and it was talking about different tactics of how you can train your subconscious mind. And one of the ways, like at one point, or when you're sleeping, is like when your subconscious mind is at work the most. So this guy's recommendation was to go on Amazon and purchase like these little, kind of like these headphones that you put underneath your pillow. And basically what it does is it like plays some type of, you can play some type of video, informational video. Maybe if you're trying to learn a language, say you want to learn Mandarin, you can play Mandarin news broadcasts or whatever it is, Mandarin movies or whatever, Mandarin music. You can literally play that at a soft level to where you can still fall asleep, but you're going to be listening to it all night. So at the end of it, so you do this every single night for a year. When you hear these words in Mandarin, it's almost like, shit, I know that word. You know what I mean? And you didn't even practice listening to this word during the daytime, but because your subconscious mind is going to work so hard at night, you're able to like pick up on these sounds and this language. So when you're actually learning a word, you're so familiar with it, it's probably going to be way easier to memorize. Mandarin is a tonal language. So when you hear certain tones, you're going to be like, I've heard that tone before. I've heard that tone before. I've heard this word actually spoken in different tones. So it's going to probably be easier to learn those tones. So it's, this is actually a good tactic that I personally haven't put into place. So I'm just talking shit right now. But at the same time, I think it's a good idea. And actually it's something that I actually kind of want to do myself.
I'd love to experiment with that. That'd be a fun one to run.
Yeah, definitely.
Test it out.
Go ahead, James.
No, I was just gonna say I love that idea of playing something to your subconscious and just seeing if it works. I mean, to me, this is like one of those things. Like it could be complete bullshit. It could be your brain tunes it out and it just like goes straight into your brain's garbage collector and just disposes of it, or it could be something that actually is like a hack. But the truth is like I wouldn't sit and wait for a study because I already know the study is done on other people. Does that work for me?
Yeah.
It could be a placebo effect for me. It gives you that little bit of an edge. Just like, oh, I listened to this whole thing for a year, so I must be a master. I mean, however it's going to work, you have to, come to your own conclusion on whether or not that's a valid strategy.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, like you can subconsciously program yourself, but at the end of the day, you need to consciously program yourself as well. And the conscious programming is actually sitting down and looking at flashcards or taking a class on language or Mandarin or whatever you want to do anyways. And then Chris B says, thanks, you answered it for sure. Let's see. And Adam Lucas says, how do you stop your phone? But I think he means how do you stop looking at your phone or any device how do you stop your phone or any device from distracting you during the day? So this is actually a good question as well. And actually, I was looking at this question while me and James were actually talking, and I was kind of thinking about some things, tactics and hacks that I use to kind of unplug is how I like to call it. And there's multiple ways to unplug. And I was sitting here thinking about, when do I have the least amount of screen time? Because I know for myself, I usually feel the least anxiety, and I'm the most at peace when I'm not on my phone that much, or when I look at, pretty much like every Sunday, if you guys have an iPhone, your phone will like have that little purple screen that comes up, or blue screen, or whatever it is, like, hey, your screen time for the week. And it's like, when I look at it and I'm like, oh shit, that's a lot of screen time. It's like, what was I doing during this week to the point where I was on the phone so much? And I think there's a few things that come to mind. Number one is environment. Where am I? Am I in a place with bad weather to where I have to stay inside all day? Am I at a job that I'm not really engaging with to the point where I have a lot of time on my hands to be looking at a device? Am I with people who aren't stimulating my mind to where, I'm not necessarily engaged in any meaningful conversations? So I always look at it like this. Number one, I want to be productive. And, one way that we can be productive is by physically moving. So getting my workouts in, that's 2 hours where I'm definitely not going to be looking at my phone too much. Um, Maybe having some reading material or something to study and something to learn every day. Maybe it might be learning a language. You might be checking out some flashcards. That's another way to do it. Three would be being around some people who, stimulate you on a mental level. I think that's extremely important, and it's an underrated one. I definitely understand the concept of, being in solitude and really grinding and working on yourself. But I think there's a lot of value into, joining forces and, putting your minds together with other people and kind of brainstorming things. And that's kind of one of the reasons why me and James are putting together this mastermind. So again, if you're interested, hit my email, travelcynics@yahoo.com, if you guys want to join the mastermind. And then number four, I would say meditation is a good one as well, because it forces you to unplug, and it forces you to sit still and kind of be inside of your own thoughts. I noticed this for myself, is that a lot of times I feel like, even when it comes down to being productive, I feel like I always need to be doing something. But in all reality, there are certain times of the day where you should just sit still. I think that's kind of something that people don't necessarily look at nowadays, because they're kind of always in this, oh, I need to be productive. I need to be productive. I need to be productive. But if we actually take some time to actually sit still sometimes, I think we can actually be more productive by using less energy, if that makes any sense to you guys. So, and another practice that I like to use is writing, using my journal, brainstorming, writing, sitting down, thinking, going on walks, doing things that are kind of active like that. And that can kind of take you away from the devices. And if you kind of compound all these things all in one thing, all in one day, then you'll look up and see that you really don't have too much time to be on your phone or be on the computer or just sitting there mindlessly consuming content. And I know that this is probably one, if you're somebody who's kind of on your grind and trying to build yourself up, you might not think this is an important one. But to me, I always find myself more at ease when I have like that feminine energy around me, and when I spend some time with a woman, even if it's just like a couple hours a day, or if I have a girlfriend and we're living in together, and I spend some time with her, there's always going to be some time where we're going to want to interact. If I'm around a girl who I'm dating, I don't want to just be sitting there with my phone in front of my face the whole time. I want to be having conversations. We're going to be touching. We're going to be talking. We're going to be doing all the things that you do as a couple or whatever. James, I don't know if you have any suggestions on how to limit the screen time.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is hard, because I think the reason why I was kind of thinking about this too. Maybe it's better to knock out more things you need to do on your phone at one time. So it's like, let's say, for example, you have like 5 conversations going on. Well, it's like, it'd be better just like wait an hour and then respond to all 5 at once, instead of like throughout that hour, like responding to one, and then it's like trying to be productive, respond to another, and it's breaking your focus pattern. But I really like what you said though about it's almost like a rest period for life, like that meditation or true relaxation. Because sometimes it's like when you're trying to be productive or you're trying to focus, but your brain's also not sharp, so you're actually trying to be productive, but you're actually you have to be honest with yourself. Actually, I'm not being productive right now. It might actually be better to recharge my brain or go for a walk or, basically allow my brain to rest before I dive back into whatever, focused task that you're working on. But for the phone thing, I don't know, because you could be, I don't know if you're on a TikTok rabbit hole. I don't know. Like, I don't know where your um, time is going, because it could just be like a dopamine issue where it's like you constantly feel like you need that dopamine hit from your phone, or it could just be like you are basically trying to multitask, or you're like trying to, half-ass a bunch of things instead of just, taking care of business. That's honestly why I like actually talking on the phone a lot as opposed to text. Like, text messages are cool because it's like you can respond whenever you want, and it's like you might be doing other stuff and you can kind of stop and, message. But then at the same time, it's like if you have over a certain amount of information you need to talk to someone about, it's like just call them up. It's like you're going to get, like, you think about in terms of like the amount of information you can exchange on like a 2-minute phone call versus text message. It's like, you can exchange more information on a 2-minute phone call than like all day of texting.
100%. And the thing about it is like, I know James puts this into practice because me and James actually have phone conversations a lot. And when it comes down to why you're using technology so much, I think that's actually less important than if you're on a TikTok. Like, I honestly don't even think there's too much of a difference between being on a TikTok rabbit hole and trying to be overproductive. Like James said, not having any mindfulness or not having any like sit still time or not having any time to be in your own head. And it's funny because I was actually talking to the girl who I'm dating. I was talking to her. Maybe it was this morning or maybe it was last night, but we were just. I think it was last night. I was talking to her, and I was like, tomorrow, like I'm gonna really like make an effort not to work, because she knows that like she knows that like I'm constantly like always feeling like I need to be productive, whether it's working out or whether it's editing some video or whether it's like working on stuff for my clients or just something productive needs to be done. And I find myself in these situations sometimes. Like, even the other day down at the coffee shop, I was like sitting at the coffee shop and I was doing a little bit of work and I finished my work, but for some reason I just wasn't satisfied with that. And I was trying to find something else productive to do on my computer while I was in the coffee shop. And it was almost like my brain was just like fighting against itself. Like, yeah, I know we're done, but we need to figure out something else to do. And, a lot of times we can get addicted to technology in that way as well. Now, some people have the other problem where it's like you go down a TikTok rabbit hole and you feel like you always need more and more dopamine hits, more and more content to stimulate your brain. And, that can, I think, but to be honest with you, I think both of them can be just as, harmful to your mind in terms of creating anxiety and creating stress, because, it's just on opposite ends of the spectrum, but you're still at the end of the day over consuming technology and over consuming screen time. And probably one other way that I would recommend to keep your screen time in check is make sure you have your notifications turned off, like Instagram notifications turned off, text message notifications turned off. For me personally, I keep my phone on silent all day long, at least on the buzzing time. I mean, what do you call it? Vibrate. I keep my phone on vibrate all day long, and I keep almost every single one of my notifications off. So for me, that's actually one thing that's key too, because if I have my phone on like actually ringing all day, like I literally wouldn't be able to concentrate. You know what I mean? Because there's always somebody texting you. There's always some Instagram note. Somebody's always DMing you. There's always some, news thing coming up. You're always getting an email. So literally at the end of the day, you're probably going to look up and you're like, I was on my phone for 10 hours today because shit just kept buzzing. And then you get into a habit actually with that, which is funny, that you can kind of be so used to picking up your phone that even when your phone's, my friend was telling me about this, it's like you have this ghost vibration in your pocket to where your phone didn't even vibrate, but you felt to vibrate anyways because you felt the need to actually pick up your phone. So it's just such a strong habit that it doesn't even matter if your phone's ringing. Oh, wait, did I hear something? Did I feel something? Let me check my phone. Somebody might have text messaged me and I didn't realize it.
Yeah, man, that ghost vibration is a real thing. I've experienced that before. It's like you actually You actually think the thing like went off, and you're like, oh shit. Maybe I
Some
just have
nerve,
nerve
some
damage.
exactly. Your legs literally is fucking shaking so much because it's craving another dopamine hit.
100%.
So your mind's playing tricks on your body. But guys, I think that's pretty much going to be it for today. I think we're gonna. If you guys have any final questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. But other than that, if you guys want to support the channel, go ahead and go to my Patreon. That's patreon.com/growth through calisthenics. Only $5 a month to become a member. I got some exclusive content on there. Also, if you guys are interested in joining the Growth Mastermind, go ahead and email me at travelsthenics@yahoo.com. Like I said, it's going to be me and James, and then we're going to have a group of like-minded individuals in there, networking, talking about different growth topics, talk about some issues that I would say I tend to kind of keep off limits because I think there's only so far I like to take things on YouTube. And that's more my Patreon account as well, just because there's some topics that I personally don't want to have be public. But if you guys, go behind that paywall, it's not even that much, $5 a month. You guys can kind of hear me speak my mind on other topics as well. And if you join the Growth Mastermind, obviously you'll hear that too. And me and James will go deeper into some of these issues. Also, we'll have a group chat on WhatsApp, assigned readings, which I already have some dope books like picked out. Honestly, that's actually one of the reasons why it's cool. Like this, man, honestly, this is one last thing I want to touch on when it comes down to like the type of women that you date. Like I tend to like be more attracted to women who are kind of a little bit more intellectual and have a little bit more going on upstairs. That's just me. And this chick that I'm dating, she's like a super avid reader, and like she's just been recommending hella books to me. So like I've been checking them out, and I'm like, damn, I definitely want to read this. Now I'm like, some of the books that she's been recommending to me, I'm like, these are some that we need to put into the Growth Mastermind group, because not only am I excited to read them, but I'm pretty sure you guys will be too. But anyways, guys, that's going to be it for today. Hope everybody's having a good one out there. Good weekend. Finish up your weekend strong, and start the week strong as well. And talk to you guys later. Peace.